United America was founded to address the growing partisan polarization in our country, which is not just a blocker to being able to solve major issues, but has now become a threat to democracy itself. So we are now 10 years in to United America existing and about 5 years into our strategy of advocating for nonpartisan election reform around the country. What led me to join United America as our founding executive director was an experience I had running for Congress as an independent candidate in 2014. I got into that race because I thought my congressman was a problem. What I learned was that the problem actually ran much deeper to issues like partisan gerrymandering, closed primaries, plurality winner elections, all of which conspire to disenfranchise voters and to distort election outcomes. And so after that race, I committed to spending the next good chunk of my career to election reform and trying to fix our broken political system. Well, I think the greatest tragedy in American politics right now is not that, we the people are hopelessly divided on this issue or that. It's that our leaders remain divided even when we can find agreement. And that's because we have a Congress in particular that does not represent a true majority of us. And the root cause of that is we have an election system that right now doesn't produce elected officials that have true majority support. So what United America is focused on is reforming our election system in order to give every voter the ability to vote for any candidate and to ensure that candidates do win majority support to get elected. There are many things that are wrong with our political system, but in my view, the biggest solvable problem is partisan primaries. And the reason why is that these are the elections that actually determine most outcomes in our political system. You have 83% of congressional seats are so lopsided for either Democrats or Republicans that the only election that matters is when the parties choose their nominee, and that happens in the primary. And the challenge is that in many states, laws discriminate against which voters can even participate. So if you're an independent voter, for example, in 15 states, you can't choose to participate in either party's primary, even though your taxpayer dollars are funding them. At the end of the day, what we see is that only 8% of voters nationally have cast ballots in primaries that ultimately determine 83% of our Congress. We have 8% electing 83%. And that's the core dysfunction of our political system right now, and why the extremes on both the far left and far right have such disproportionate influence in our politics, and why our leaders are not incentivized to actually get anything done. So that's the primary problem that we're out to solve. Yeah, I think most Americans' frustration right now is they don't feel their elected officials have their best interests at heart or reflect their views and values. I mean, that's why the largest and fastest growing segment of the electorate are political independents, people who say, I don't belong to this party or that one. But when you look at all 435 members of the US House right now, there's not a single independent, there's not a single third party candidate. And so it just goes to show how unrepresentative our representative democracy is right now. And that's a function of the electoral process that we have, that it doesn't force the kind of competition and choice that most voters desire. We keep shaking our fists at the politicians themselves when we should be working together to unrig this system that is benefiting the political class well, but not the people. Well, I think when most people look at how divided and dysfunctional our politics have become, they point to the politicians, that they're too divisive or too radical or even corrupt. And in some respects, in some cases, they're not wrong. But you have to ask yourself, how did those politicians get into office in the first place? Why do they behave the way that they do? And in my view, it's not a people problem. This is an elections problem or an incentives problem, because in order to get elected right now, a candidate has to pander to their party base on the left or the right just to win the primary. If we can remove that dysfunction in our election system, I think it will inspire more candidates to run for office and elected leaders who are already there to serve what is in the broad interest of the country and put country over party to solve major challenges, which is what most voters want them to do. As I write about in my book called The Primary Solution, the essential solution to our challenge of our broken elections is to abolish partisan primaries. And there are many ways of doing that. 5 states, in fact, have already done it, ranging from Louisiana, which got rid of their primaries altogether, to Alaska, which I think adopted the most powerful solution. And that solution was replacing both party primaries with a single all-candidate primary, so that when you go to vote, you don't have to choose between the red ballot or the blue ballot. You get a red, white, and blue ballot and get to choose any candidate for any office. And then the top 4 finishers go on to the general election, where you have the option of ranking them according to preference. And what that does is ensures that whoever wins does so with majority support. That's the system that gives more voice and choice to voters and is able to hold our elected leaders accountable to a true majority of voters and not just the base of their political party. I think as more states abolish partisan primaries, what we will see is more elected officials who are liberated from the grips of their party base to do what is in the best interest of all of us and to solve the problems we care about. We care about the debt, immigration, healthcare, climate. These are all issues right now that can't be solved in a sustainable way because of the intense partisanship and gridlock in Congress. If we can make these changes to our elections, no longer will primaries, for example, be the blocker on our ability to work across the aisle to implement solutions. And moreover, I think we will see campaigns in which candidates have to actually say what they're for, not just what they're against, because we'll have general elections where there won't just be a binary contest between one Democrat and one Republican, but you'll have a variety of candidates to choose from, and they will be working to earn the vote of every voter, not just the ones that might turn out in a traditional party primary. So Alaska, I think, is the model for what we would like to see other states do in terms of election reform. And it all started when an activist in that state brought a group of Democrats, Republicans, and independents together, said the system isn't working out well for any of us right now because the legislature's not getting the things done to solve the state's problems, and designed a new system. And half the states, like Alaska, have ballot initiatives where you don't have to rely on the politicians currently in office to make changes. You can go around the legislature, gather signatures for a citizens initiative, get it onto the ballot, and then make the case to all voters as to why they should support it. And that case in Alaska was very much on the idea that every voter should be able to vote for any candidate, that winners of elections should be required to have majority support. These are principles that over 70% of Democrats, Republicans, and independents all support. And that's how change happens. And that's how right now over a half dozen other states are trying to follow Alaska's lead in qualifying similar initiatives to the ballot this year. I think the biggest challenge that we face in advancing election reform isn't that both parties are opposed to some of these ideas, although they are. It's that a lot of citizens underestimate our own agency, our own power to be able to overcome that opposition in order to enact these ideas. And that's why I'm inspired by history that has shown our ability to do this really since the founding. Our founding fathers didn't write party primaries into the Constitution, for example. They were invented out of whole cloth at the turn of the 20th century when the old system wasn't working. And what people at that time said was, we can demand something better, and we did. And so, as we know, who could vote has changed radically over time, but also how we vote has changed too. We didn't always used to have a secret ballot. We didn't always used to elect directly members of the Senate. We never used to always have ballot initiatives themselves. These things were done because citizens in their own time said, we can use the tools of democracy given to us to improve our democracy itself. And that's the tradition in which we carry forward today. I describe the work of United America not just as nonpartisan, but aggressively nonpartisan. And why that's so important is because we have to remember who these reforms are for. It's not for either political party. It's not for the political class. It's for the people. It's for voters. This is a movement that wants to put voters first. And that's why our team is made up of Democrats, Republicans, Independents. You might have a Green or Libertarian as well, all working together to say that there are some things that are more important than our disagreements on this policy or that policy. The thing that's more important is this thing that we share called democracy, which is how we do self-governance together. Because in absence of that, you have what we've had for most of human history, which is that might makes right, and anarchy or political violence as a way of getting resolution to certain issues. What we have here is a great experiment that was started 250 years ago in America that we can continue today, that we have our institutions that are designed to narrow our differences and solve common problems. That's special, and that's something that we can't take for granted, and we need to continue to work on. And that's not a partisan cause. That's an American cause. So we have 7 values at United America that guides us as an organization. The first value is the most important, which is we put voters first. It's a way of reminding our team about who the customer is that we're serving. Although we're a donor community and a philanthropic venture fund, and we work with political leaders, all of that is a means to an end of serving the voter. We also have a value of playing the long game. We know that this problem wasn't created overnight. It's not going to be solved overnight. So the way that we approach trying to enact our solutions is realizing we're going to be at this for a while. So maintaining the integrity of our approach, for example, is a really important core value. And the last but not least value on this list is taking care of each other. We realize, as I remind the team, our time is our most precious resource, and it's special when now 30 people are committing their time and their jobs right now to trying to make our democracy a better place. And in the course of doing that, this is a team that wants to find joy in the work that we do and wants to have each other's backs through what is a turbulent political moment right now. So those are some of the values that we really cherish at United America. One thing I think is really special about the way that United America works to enact election reform is that our vision is, of course, a more representative and functional government where Democrats, Republicans, and Independents are working together on solutions. But we don't have to wait for that to happen downstream in order to model that now. So we have a board, a staff, a donor community that is cross-partisan, where we're actually collaborating across lines of difference in order to bring these solutions to voters and to legislatures. And one example of this is, in the state of Maine, where there was bipartisan legislation, Democrats, Republicans coming together to open the state's primaries, so that this year is the first year that independent voters will be able to participate, in those elections. Or in Virginia, a bipartisan bill that turned into a constitutional amendment that got rid of partisan gerrymandering in the state. So the work itself is a way of demonstrating that collaboration in our politics is possible in order to have a political system that actually rewards that type of behavior rather than punishes it, which is what we currently see today. Over 2/3 of Americans believe that both parties are doing such a terrible job that a third one is needed. And I think it's only a matter of time before we will see the success of minor parties and third parties as the political system and our electoral system itself opens up the process for more competition and levels the political playing field. Right now we have a 4 or 5 party system jammed in a 2-party system. What does a Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez have in common with a Joe Biden? What does a Mitt Romney have in common with a Mike Johnson, right? So there are factions that exist within both political parties today, but they don't have a real opportunity to express themselves because of an electoral system that punishes the opportunity to vote for a third party because people fear that might elect the party that they least support. Because we have this plurality winner system. So with innovations like ranked choice voting and top 4 primaries, I think we can unlock a lot of the coalitions that exist in our politics to organize into new political parties and give voters more choice. So since 2019, United America has mobilized over $70 million through our philanthropic venture fund to support election reform campaigns all across the country. And these are locally led efforts of citizens coming together to improve our election system. And we've seen several major statewide victories, getting rid of partisan gerrymandering in Virginia, abolishing party primaries in Alaska, winning ranked choice voting in New York City. And these reforms have impacted millions of voters and have improved representation for them. And we're just getting started. I think over the next 3 years in particular, we have a goal of trying to win nonpartisan primaries in 6 more states and seeing others reforms that we support in another 10. And I think the power that has is ultimately in liberating more of our leaders in Congress to do what we want them to do, to work together and solve the major issues that we care about. That's when we know that we'll be successful, is when we see Congress actually doing its job again. So United America supports state-based campaigns, and a good example of this is Idahoans for Open Primaries, a campaign that is working to adopt the Alaska-style reform of nonpartisan primaries and instant runoffs this year. That campaign has organized over 2,000 volunteers across 41 chapters in the state to go out and collect over 70,000 signatures from citizens to help qualify that initiative for the ballot. Each one of those interactions is an opportunity for a voter to learn about what election reform means and eventually to hopefully vote for it, come election day. So over the course of an 18-month campaign, citizens are being reached and engaged in these efforts to reimagine what their democracy looks like and what their democracy can produce. And that's what I think is so special about the moment that we're in, is yes, there are big challenges and there's reasons to be disaffected and disappointed and disillusioned, but there's nothing so broken about the system that we can't use the tools that we have to fix it. And that's being shown in real time all across the country. So 2024 is a big year for election reform. There could be as many as 8 different ballot initiatives this November that will give voters the opportunity to vote for reform or to protect reform where it's been won. One of the states I'm most excited about is the state where I'm from in Colorado. This is a campaign that would abolish party primaries and require majority winners in general elections. And the impact that can have is making every voter's ballot really matter. Colorado, like most states, most of the elections are decided in the primary by just one of the political parties. If we're able to succeed in passing this reform, it will give every citizen really their voice back that's been taken away by a stagnant system that works well for those in power, but that's just about it. And I think as we can succeed in more states, we can see the pace of our progress accelerate. Again, I'm inspired when I look to history and see that Wisconsin was the first state in 1904 to adopt a primary, and within a decade, a majority of states followed suit. So change tends to happen slowly and then all at once. And I think that's the inflection point right now that I see for the election reform movement. The toughest states to win reform are those that are swing states that are very competitive, because both parties are very sensitive to any change in the rules that might introduce an advantage or disadvantage for either side. And so they wind up spending a lot of money to defeat any changes to the election system. I think we have potentially more success in states that are solidly Democratic or solidly Republican, where there is no political competition, that these reforms can enable more competition, even if it's within just one of the major parties, and to make November elections matter again. The advice I would give for people looking to get involved is don't underestimate the power that you have in holding the most important office in this land, which is one of citizen, where we have seen big change came from the bottom up. One of the people I'm inspired by in our movement is someone around my age named Katie Fahey. And in 2018, she posted on Facebook that she was angry about how partisan gerrymandering was, eroding the power of their votes. That post went viral, and she wound up organizing thousands of citizens in Michigan to go out and eventually help pass a constitutional amendment in that state to get rid of partisan gerrymandering. People watching this, people considering getting involvement, could be the next Katie, or you could be the next volunteer to help the next Katie to get one of these reforms done. Not only is that possible, that's the only way that big change has happened. My hope for the future is that this generation, my generation, can look back and say that we left our democracy better than we found it, including that we survived these turbulent times in which there are threats to democracy, threats to free and fair elections, and that we did all we could, because I don't think we can take for granted this special gift that we've been given by prior generations to have a system of government in which every person gets one vote and in which our representatives get to work together to represent us. And my hope is that we will fulfill that opportunity and, in fact, that obligation to keep this American experiment going, and to make sure that that system can continue to deliver for people, which is not only just to protect the rights that we have, but to provide an ecosystem, a society in which we can continue to flourish, in which people can chase their dreams and have the ability to succeed. I think right now our political system advantages those who want to divide us on lines of ideology or divide us on lines of identity, and it punishes those who want to bring people together. And if we want to change that, we have to change the incentives. And the incentives right now are driven by our election system. So I think the reforms that United America is championing is going to be able to open new pathways for leaders who really value bringing people together rather than pitting them against each other. If I had a megaphone and could share one message with the world, it would be, don't underestimate the power that you have to make a difference. When I was 24 years old and ticked off with my congressman and the way that Congress wasn't getting things done, I went out and collected 7,000 signatures from my neighbors to get my name on the ballot and to run for office. And while I wasn't successful in that race, I was able to spend a year talking to thousands of people in my community about ways that we can find common ground and also hold our leaders accountable. And it reminded me that as broken as things are, we still have the ability and the tools and the mechanisms to create change. And whether that's running for office or getting involved in your community or helping to pass election reform or just advocating for the issues that you care about, your voice matters, and now's the time to use it. Over the last 2 years, I've been so gratified to be able to meet so many people within the Summit community who are amazing dreamers and doers across all aspects of society. And some might look at what United America is doing as being politics, and well, politics is what someone else does. And my challenge that I've been able to share with so many people is actually politics is undergirding our ability to have a society that makes possible every other issue and innovation and dream that we have. And so my call to action is that we channel our disillusionment and our frustration not by removing ourselves from something that belongs to all of us, which is our democracy, but channeling that frustration in a way that we double down and we get involved because it's that important and it's fundamental to everything else that we care about. My favorite part about being me is the privilege and opportunity that comes along with having a vocation in which I feel like I can make a difference at scale. And although working in election reform is an intensive job, it's one that doesn't feel like work to me because it is so deeply aligned with what I'm passionate about. And that's my favorite part about me, is that I get to spend my time doing something that I love, that I feel will also leave the world in a bit of a better place. Hi, I'm Nick. I lead Unite America. If you're interested in learning more about election reform, you can head on over to our website at uniteamerica.org and also check out a copy of my new book. It's called The Primary Solution. And I'm on Twitter at Nick Troiano.